right, so well, thank you all for joining us today. Yes, I can go? All right, so thank you for joining, and thanks to Fireblocks, to Collider, and to Starkware to hosting this amazing event. Let me introduce to you our speakers today. So we have Arik from Fireblocks, who will address the security. We will have Ran from Orbs, who will give us their DevOps opinion and anything that has to do with building on from Web2 to Web3. And then we have a surprise guest, which I'm not sure even announced already on the website. We're very lucky to have with us today Jonathan from Innovation Lab of Ledger, who is going to share with us some unique insights on the latest development in transition from Web2 to Web3. He will also explain to us what he thinks about the numbers. So the organizers have kindly asked us to make it a bit more fun for you, so it's not just boring and very technical. So I will ask everyone here to share something fun about himself or herself, and I will kick it myself. So to give some relevance to what we're doing today, I had a crazy situation at Web Summit. You might know Web Summit, the big event in Lisbon. In 2018, I had a huge panel on custody. It was actually Pascal from Ledger, Alex Batlin from Castology, I don't know if it exists anymore, and Liraz Siri, for people who know him, maybe our famous Israeli white hat. And we had microphones working. Actually, the guy's checking right now if it's working again. But we couldn't hear ourselves. So we had a crazy echo, so the audience could hear us, but we couldn't hear each other. So that was one of the craziest experiences I had on a panel. So that's me. I pass it. Who wants to continue? Yeah, Arik, you go.
I'll take it. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Currently, we're like at the conference to conference kind of situation. Planning to go to Denver next, and I'm very excited about Denver because I'm snowboarding, and so going to Denver is like something I've been waiting for, and very, very excited to get to the Rocky Mountains. The only problem is I had knee surgery a month ago, so I'm not going to be doing any snowboarding. So yeah, a twist in the plot, but still going to have some fun.
So is this working? Probably. I'll embarrass myself with the following story, not crypto conference related. Obviously it's not noticeable, but I'm a big nerd. I know it doesn't seem that way. But I'm a big Star Wars fan, and now that I have kids, I have two kids, 4 and 3, 4.5 and 3, I'm able to really let it go. Like, I'm really into it now. So for my birthday, I got like a very nice Obi-Wan Kenobi lightsaber, which is like full-on replica. It's like costs quite a lot, makes noise, lights, everything. So I had like another kid from the kindergarten and his dad come over. And my kids were like, "Dad, pull out the lightsaber. You should pull out the lightsaber." So I pulled the lightsaber, I swing it around. I look at the face of the other dad. He's like, "What the fuck? Where are we?" I'm sorry. Where are we? And they never came back to us again.
Uh-oh.
Hi. So, how can I continue? I was a poker player before jumping into crypto space. So I pay my studies with poker, and I was used to play a lot on cash game online, not very live. But I just say that if you can, guys, just create a conference in Las Vegas, I would be very happy. So I'm here to wait on the ETH Las Vegas, for example.
All right, Vegas for you. But we should all remember that we have a former poker player, so any Twitter poker, beware. All right, so let's dive a little bit into the subject. So we were asked to cover for you today the transition from Web2 to Web3. And I think for many of us, that transition could be summarized in one word, being adoption. So what is adoption? Because it's a word which, you know, seems to mean so many things to many of us, and some don't even know what is behind it. So I would like to ask my partners to this panel to address, or share with us what is adoption for you. So Jonathan, you can start. I feel like you're ready.
Okay, so serious question. What is adoption? To me, adoption is where people will start using the apps, all the apps, the DeFi, etc. we build in last year, we found even knowing they are using something decentralized. And this is the point to me about the adoption. Right now it's very difficult to enter this ecosystem. You have to learn a lot of things. It's like, just start a new video games and play the tutorial for the first 20 hours and then start really playing the game. So for me, adoption is on your side, and we have to build an ecosystem when people are going to use the Web3 things without knowing it. It's like using HTTPS, for example. People don't know what is it really, but they use it every day without noticing about it, for example. I guess this is my definition, and this is the goal of Ledger. This is what is drive your future products, for example.
Thank you. Ran?
So I'll kind of piggyback off Jonathan, but I think I'll take it to maybe like a more abstract level. I think for me, so I guess like the question is what is Web3, right? What are we adopting? So I would say that Web3 is money, as in cryptocurrency, assets, as in NFT or other assets, and identity being an integral part of the blockchain layer, of the internet layer, basically. So I would say, like, for me, adoption is probably people interacting with crypto assets, either cryptocurrency, NFTs, like self-sovereign identity, digital identity, on the internet in a way that's more decentralized than it is today. I'm not one of the hardcore decentralization advocates, but more decentralized than it is today, at scale. So that's how I would put it. So really interacting with assets at scale, not knowing interacting with them, it's also good. But that's how I view it.
Yeah, so I have kind of two separate points to that. I think, first of all, adoption for me is when we stop talking about adoption. Because right now, a lot of the conversation is how many people hold cryptocurrencies, how many people have digital assets. Those are the kind of questions that people are asking. Not a lot of people are asking who owns a phone or how many cars do we have. It's just something we pretty much know that people just use, right? How many people use a website? It's like, yeah, like everybody all the time, 100 times a day, right? So that's like the first part of adoption for me, is when we don't think about it anymore. Now, going to the specific of what are we adopting, I think for me, adoption is going to be where the web has ownership built in. So it's not about how it's named. It kind of feels to me like the web ecosystem was built with a missing leg of ownership of things. I'm on the web for 20 years now, and I don't own anything except like a domain. It just feels wrong to me, and I think ownership is just going to get built into the web world, and people will say, oh, that Web3 never happened. That's so weird. Everybody was talking about it, but they'll be owning a bunch of stuff on the net. So that's adoption for me.
2 hands up for ownership. So, thank you. So I'm using a cheat sheet here. I want to share with you guys. I saw a tweet this week of Stefan Pimentel. I don't know how many of you know who is Stefan. He was one of the guys who was managing Calibra at Facebook, and now we're not sure what he's working on. But he shared an interesting tweet. He said, looking back at how long it took to create adoption for 100 million users, he gives the numbers for telephone, 75 years, mobile phone, 16 years, World Wide Web, 7 years, iTunes, 6.5 years, Twitter, 5 years, Facebook, 4.5 years, WhatsApp, 3.5 years, Instagram, 2.5 years, Apple App Store, 2 years, and now we come to the absolute winner, ChatGPT, 2 months. So we have quite some records to beat here for Web3. Having said that, we pass into the next subject, being looking at different aspects of adoption. So for me personally, adoption also means for people to run their own node. Well, can we do that? Let's see. So I would like to ask my panel partners to look from the bottom up this time. So when we look at the blockchain, right, we start with the chain itself. Like you start with Ethereum, then you have layer 1, then you have layer 2, then you have layer 3, and so on. Well, that's if we look at EVM chains. Of course, now you have newcomers, dark chains, and other chains such as Telegram, where the structure is different. So when we look on the chain level, like what kind of adoption do we expect? How things work out? Jonathan, want to start and give your perspective? Adoption starting from the chain.
Okay, so yeah, I don't think.
It's working?
Okay, good. Okay.
We have more people coming in. There's some spaces here. Please join us.
So yeah, adoption on the
starting from the chain. Yeah.
So one thing I'm excited about is if you look at the chain, if you look at the network, and all the future improvement we can do, for example, on Ethereum or any EVM chains, is account abstraction. So I'm going to talk about account abstraction.
Very popular subject.
So it's a hot topic right now in the EVM ecosystem. It's basically, I think it's one of the most important stones we have right now to put into the chain to improve the adoption and start onboarding people that doesn't even know what is ETH as a token. It's crazy, but it's reality. I don't know if you are familiar, guys, with account abstraction, but basically on the mainnet of Ethereum right now, you have two types of accounts. What we call a NEO-A for externally owned account. This is basically what you have, because it's an account controlled by the private keys. So basically, it's what you have to hold and store tokens or NFTs. And we have smart contracts. And so smart contract is just a software on demand. And account abstraction is basically moving from two type of accounts to one type of account and only use smart contract even for the accounts. And what is unlocked by this migration is that now your account is programmable. And what does it mean? Let me take one example. For example, if tomorrow you have, I hope so not, but if you have an accident, okay, it's a problem because you have your 24 words written on the piece of paper, and if you have unfortunately an accident, you don't have any legacy system, you don't have any air system. Using account abstraction, as your account is programmable, is a smart contract, you can say, okay, I'm going to add a list of pub key, okay, so just some public key to my smart contract, and I will say, okay, if I don't interact with my smart contract, for example, for 1 year, these people will have access to my account and take the control of my asset. And this is a very big problem in the whole ecosystem, including Bitcoin, for example, but this is very trivial to solve using account abstraction, and that's why I think it's one of the most important piece of architecture to include.
It is a game changer. Absolutely agreed.
Is it?
Now, I would like to break the order of how we were speaking so far, and I'll ask Arik to intervene, because when we talk about adoption, when we talk about chains, when we talk about layers, an immediate question that comes up is security. So what could you share on that level?
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll piggyback from the account abstraction conversation. I think to some extent, and this is obviously like it's a very important move that is basically happening in the EVM ecosystem. But I think this is, in a nutshell, it's an example of our stage, is that we're talking about fundamental building blocks still shifting on the blockchain level. That's where we are at. We haven't fully, as an ecosystem, we haven't fully decided on which blockchains we're using, how many blockchains we're using, how many layers of blockchains we're using. Is it an L1, L2? Some people talk about L3. And so like we're at the very, very basic level of creating the technology. So if we think about adoption, first of all, like we have a road to go here, because these kind of conversations not the kind of conversation that you're having when 1 billion people are using your technology, right? It's like very infrastructure, very low level. But that means that companies that are going into this space, right? And a lot of them are Web3, Web2 companies, right? Like companies that have been built in the general web world. They need to think about those issues, right? They need to start thinking about what is account abstraction. Like you need a course in the university to get to the level that you understand all of the basics to get to account abstraction. So I think one of the aspects that it makes is that it's hard to do this in a good way. It's hard to do it efficiently. It's hard to do it securely. And so a lot of people going into the space can easily make mistakes between all of the different technicalities they need to take care of, the technology technicalities they need to take care of to be able to provide their product to users. So yeah, security is definitely one of those things. Security and usability, those are things that we focus on. And I think people basically need, like, the developers that are building and are coming from just regular building of products, they need a lot of help in kind of taking care of the different nuances of blockchains, of Ethereum with account abstraction, without account abstraction. You go to L2s, some of them support account abstraction or support it optionally. Like all of those things need to be wrapped into something where you make an API call, create a wallet. You make an API call, create a transaction, follow the transaction. And you don't have to by yourself take care of all those things, because I think there's some infrastructure players, obviously with us, with Ledger, with other companies that are doing this, that are basically helping you not make the mistakes that you could be making if you were doing it yourself.
And all this while protecting the endpoints, I assume.
Exactly, and you know, a lot of this is eventually there's companies who are building, but then there's users, right? And like we all care about the companies, but eventually we really care about the end user, because those are the people that can eventually lose money, right? So like, which is kind of like the most horrible thing we can do to a person. He comes into a new product, a new technology, and then he feels that situation of something bad happening to him.
Agreed, absolutely. So now I'm taking it to you, Ran, and we're going to jump, with your permission, we're going to jump from layer 1 to layer 3, because we don't have anyone from layer 2 today. So Ran, could you share with us on the layer 3 perspective, like what it takes to make it doable for developers to build on top apps, dApps, whatever it takes?
Right, thanks. So I guess like when we're really thinking about adoption, it's interesting to think, like we've just discussed from bottom up, but it's actually interesting to think from like the app layer down. Because if you think about internet users, like people use the internet all the time, nobody has an idea how it works. I mean, maybe some people in the room, I have no idea how it works.
True.
So I guess people are more like users, and obviously people who are building apps for users or dApps for users, they should and usually they care about the user experience. So it's really from the top down. And then for developers, they really try to, you know, they need to figure out what is the best stack for them to build on. And, you know, we see different ecosystems taking different approaches to this. Ethereum is by far the most widely used blockchain for developers, right? Bitcoin is also there, but it's not a lot of people are building on Bitcoin. Some people do, but not a lot. And Ethereum, like the way you see this ecosystem built, it's mostly for professional users, and you see that a lot of the use cases you see on Ethereum, not all, but a lot of the use cases you see on Ethereum is really made for pros. And then you have tons of layers on top of it. You have, first of all, Ethereum, again, it's very good to safeguard your assets. It's an amazing security layer, but it doesn't scale that well yet. Maybe it will one day. So you have a lot of layer 2 scaling solutions, right? Like higher throughput, lower fees, all that stuff. But then it's still a bit limited by design. There's like some stuff you can do on EVM blockchains, Ethereum and Ethereum compatible chains. But there's also a lot of stuff that you can't. Like EVM doesn't have events. You can't...
ordering, it doesn't have ordering.
Yeah, you can't tell an EVM smart contract, hey, wake up to today at 6 p.m. and do something, because the contract doesn't know when 6 p.m. is. And then on top of that, you have layer 3, which is what we're building at Orbs, which is basically an enhancement layer, Oracle layer, that lets you interact with the chain layer in a way that's fully decentralized. So you can run pretty much the same type of code you run on AWS or Google Cloud. You can run it on top of a decentralized network. But then on top of that, you also need a good app layer. You need a good wallet solution so people don't lose their funds. So there's a full stack. And you also see there are also other ecosystems. Like, for example, we're building on Tone ecosystem. That's a fairly new one. I think that's the biggest new one of the new L1's chains that isn't EVM. So you see different approach for adoption. I think one of the main things that kind of hinders adoption is gas fees paid by users. I think that's a very big, that's a pain point because people don't usually.
Agreed.
Yeah, you know, people like, you know, I use apps all the time. I don't have money in like virtual account that I pay for every time I interact with apps. You know, that's not how the internet works. And fundamentally, in the way Ethereum built in the L1 level, you have to have some, you know, some gas fee, some dust for gas fees in your wallet in order to interact with the chain. Can be a lot of, by the way, at some points. But then you see ecosystem that's built different. Like, for example, just in Tone, for example, you can have the developer pay the fees and not the user. So basically, you can feed in the fees at the beginning to the smart contracts, have them be there, and then you don't have to have the users interact with funds at all, which is a bit similar to some of the ideas we've heard here. So there's different ecosystem, and they have different approach to this. And I would say that really has to be from the top down. So from the experience level, then you figure out what stack is best for you to use as a developer.
Interesting. I was going to ask you to comment on Tone, but you said yourself. So Telegram Tone guys couldn't join us today, and Ran agreed to cover for them as well. Thank you. So I want to use my cheat sheet again. You know, crypto Twitter is very inspiring and very insightful. So, you know, Jake Brookman, many of you might know Jake Brookman from CoinFund. So he wrote this week, how do you get the user to understand wallets and private keys? And then he answers himself. He says, crazy idea, make the user an engineer. Well, there we go. So we're going into next subject. So how do we onboard these guys? How do we allow users who are not engineers to come in? And Jonathan, I want to ask you to take the lead on this one. Tough one, but he has it. You'll see.
Easy question.
So yeah, I work in the very small team at Ledger. So Ledger is very famous for the hardware wallet, of course, one of the most secure device. But I work in the small team called Innovation Labs. It's a team composed of developers and researchers. And right now we are very focused on this topic because we are building a new product called Fresh. It will be released in a few months.
Fresh or Flash? Sorry.
Fresh.
Fresh.
Fresh. It's just a code name. Don't tweet it, please. But yeah, so we are very focused on this UX aspect, and because this is a product for account abstraction. So we are going to build this web wallet in response of account abstraction. We are going to deploy it at first on Starknet, a validity rollup on top of Ethereum, already on, and
that could explain your presence here today.
Yeah, exactly. And so Starknet is a very, very new ecosystem. So they bet on account abstraction from the beginning. That's why we are betting on it. And we plan to deploy the solution on any VM blockchain that we support in the future account abstraction. And we did the bet on the onboarding that to use a new technology. It's not very new, but yeah, let's say new, called WebOpen. And this is not a web3 things, and this is a point. We are going to use WebOpen. Is a new technology that allows you to just generate the keys and sign a message using your mobile phone, your browser, and using a biometry. So we are building a product that will allow you in a few months to sign a message, mint an NFT, by using Face ID, for example. And we did the bet on, okay, we talk about onboarding people, and we talk about adoption, but from the beginning, we split the ecosystem in two parts. We have the web2 developers, web2 user, and on the right, the web3 user and web3 developers. We would like to just destroy this barrier and just talk about the web. And that's why we are going to use the web things to develop a new web3 product, if I can say. And the WebOpen is probably one of the key. I will expect to see other companies, labeled web2 for the moment using WebAuthn2. Apple did a move 1 month ago. Now you can recover some keys and some authentication keys using iCloud, for example. And yeah, as the account is a smart contract, on top of that, you can, because you will probably say, okay, if I create my account, if I use my web from my iPhone using Face ID to control my account and do a transaction, what's happened if I lose it or if someone steals it? And using account abstraction, you can imagine adding multiple signer, okay, to the account that say, okay, I'm going to add my mobile phone, and then I'm going to add my laptop, and then I'm going to add my hardware, my ledger, and we have this three different entry points to control and interact with my account. And then I will be able to say, okay, I'm going to add some policies. So you can imagine in 6 months using one of the new products at Ledger and say, okay, I'm going to mint an NFT using my iPhone, on my bed. And in the afternoon, I'm going to do a little swap using a DeFi product using my laptop. And at the end of the day, I will do something more, I would say, sensitive using my hardware wallet, because my hardware wallet will have more permission than my mobile phone, for example. And I think this is a key to onboard people. And this is one of the vision we have, and we are going to shape it in a few months. But at the end, and this is, I think it's very important for the adoption, is the abstraction of, like you said, the fees and all the token. We can imagine having your parents, for example, using web3 application without knowing it, and only use dollars, for example. We can abstract the fees, we can abstract absolutely everything we want using Paymaster from the account abstraction, and we say, okay, I'm going to mint your NFT, I'm going to do a swap, I'm going to do interact with some DApp, buy my own ENS domain, but all of this interaction, I will just use dollars, for example, because I will just wrap in some USD and only use a stablecoin to do whatever I want, because all the fees will be abstract by a paymaster, for example Ledger or any other one, and I will never have to understand what is an ERC20, what is an ERC721, for example, because we only use dollars for it.
Okay, Arik has something to add.
Yeah. So we at Fireblocks, I think we have a slightly different angle to this, being an infrastructure player. If we think about how, like, the next billion users, right? That's what people use usually when they talk about this. Basically get into this ecosystem. We're not in the business of choosing winners. Basically, I'm not sure which applications are going to be the one that actually bring the masses to use digital assets. Is it going to be in gaming? Is it going to be like a web3 gaming company? There's a lot of web3 great gaming companies that are trying their best to like create that game with 100 million users. It might be a regular gaming company that just decides to use web3 as part of their infrastructure, right? Same goes in social networks. Is it going to be like one of the new ones that are now popping up and saying, hey, we need to break the way that social networks work right now? Or is it going to be some of the old social networks that adopt this technology? They can bring 1 billion users in like the day they launch, right? So we're not sure, and we're not really in the business of choosing winners. We're also not in the business of trying to become the company that necessarily by itself does all of those things. But basically, we want to make sure whoever it is that comes in, whether if it's going to be Walmart or it's going to be like somebody new, whether it's going to be, again, like EA Sports, or it's going to be like this new gaming company, we're not necessarily sure they're going to have a team of cryptographs on hand to do the Web3 stuff and the wallet stuff and the keys management. We're not sure they're going to have a big team of security experts taking care of everything blockchain related. And we kind of want to make sure they don't have to. I think that layer of companies that can bring a lot of user when they create just a successful product, because that's the one thing they care about. They're not necessarily thinking about blockchain all the time. They think about an amazing product that they want to build. They're focused on it. They're super, super target focused on creating the best experience. And like they need some assistance on the blockchain level, right? So I think a lot of the solutions to what we're looking for are going to come from those amazing companies. I don't have any doubt that some of those companies are going to be either created or, again, kind of brought into the ecosystem. It kind of has to happen. That's how I feel about this. But like we just need to make sure that they have a really, really solid base below them to build on the infrastructure layer.
Thank you. That's a good angle. So I have one thing that remained unanswered before we move into UI UX, and that's EVM compatibility. I don't know who wants to take it, but we have seen. You want to take it, Ron? So I just want to add a primer here. So we have seen emergence on non-EVM chains lately. Well, you know that for a while DAGs were there. They were not working so well. Then there was Solana that managed to sort out some parts of the equation. Now we have Ton coming in. Two big newcomers out of Facebook, Sui and Aptos, right? Built on Move, non-EVM chains. So how important it is today to make your app, DApp, whatever you do, EVM compatible?
Okay, so we are in the business of choosing winners.
Oh, yes.
Just because we don't have 700 people, we have 30 something, so we have to choose where we develop. So EVM compatibility has always been big. Like for us, we have our own like orbs, we have our own mainnet, but we did decide to have our token back in 2019 when our mainnet was launched to have it as an ERC20 token. And the reason for that is there's no way we could have enough people interact with our chain if it was native on our own. Just getting the wallets to integrate you, getting the exchanges to integrate you, being listed on all the big sites that monitor on-chain activity, there's no way you could do it if you're not EVM compatible. That being said, we are seeing tons of progress. We are seeing a lot of chains that are not EVM compatible and that they may have an interesting edge. We also see a lot of big tech companies, big consumer-oriented tech companies coming into the space and trying to do their take on it. And as I mentioned before, I think Ethereum is mostly a tool that was initially built for pros. And a lot of the design choices made in Ethereum are kind of based on that. And then you see different ecosystems. One of them was Libra, DM, now reincarnated as Sui and Aptos. And the same is relevant with Ton, which was initially, Gram was initially built by Telegram, and then SEC and other stuff, it kind of reincarnated into becoming Ton. But you see these are big tech companies who are user-focused. I mean, Telegram today has 750 million users out of like 5 billion internet users. And when they build things, they're looking more onto the user experience, and that's a bit different. I think another like big aspect of adoption is go-to-market. Like, how do you get to people? So, like for Ethereum, end of the day, I think the most used Ethereum access point is MetaMask, but it's still something that's a bit niche. Like MetaMask has around 5 million active monthly users. Which is a lot for crypto, but it's like nothing for the internet, right? It's like 0.1% of internet users. So it's hard to get to new people, and it's hard to get new people to join. I mean, I think the biggest surge in new people we've seen in the last few years was around the NFT thing. Like around the NFT boom, it was quite interesting to see a lot of people who are not either money people, like people enthusiastic about, you know, Bitcoin going up and stuff like that, and not hardcore developers who are really interested about decentralized computer like Ethereum. So you see people who are buying stuff as consumers, like we saw consumerism on chain. I think that's a thing we saw first with NFTs. But then again, you know, it's hard to figure out what wallet to download, and like half of the people who bought NFTs somehow lost them at some point. So go-to-market is important, and one of the advantages that companies, and that's why we picked to build on Ton, among other things, but with a big focus on that, is because of the go-to-market, like the way you reach new users, and in that specific case, it's via the Telegram app.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think one of the things a lot of people talk about account abstraction, but it's not the only level of abstraction that we need to think about. As one of my vices, I'm an engineer. And one of the things that I am most concerned about, afraid of in any kind of new thing that I'm building is, what if I have to re-platform at some phase? Like, what if I made some wrong technical decision, right? Like, initially, a lot of people were thinking this about clouds. Did I choose the right cloud? Will I need to move to a different cloud? Then, like, different systems that have come up that allow you to do, again, like, kind of make a more abstract decision and be able to move. And so I think this is something that exists right now on blockchains that is kind of problematic for the builders of the space is you might want to choose one chain today, but you're not 100% sure this chain is going to serve you well as you grow as a company, as the ecosystem matures, as technological changes happen in the ecosystem that impact you. And so that decision being so vital, I'm building now on this specific blockchain, I'm committed to it. If the blockchain goes down, I don't have a business, right? Like it's kind of it's a problematic situation, and I think it's really important for us at Fireblocks, but generally in the ecosystem, is to make sure that we're not putting builders, developers in that situation where it's a life or death decision for the business, what they chose on day one. Because again, like it's hard to foresee the future. It's hard to understand 2 years out from now what's going to be the right decision looking backwards. So I think this entire conversation of EVM by itself is some level of abstraction, right? People are saying, wait a sec, I have one EVM chain, there's another EVM chain. A lot of things are similar. That's great. But we still have non-EVM chains. And so that next level of abstraction is something we at Fireblocks we care about a lot, is making sure that kind of you can interact with different chains, but you don't have to be the expert in every chain. And even more important than that, than the expertise that you need to gain, is you do have a way to eventually transition your business without killing it in the process if the technology underlying is changing, right? And we all know there's a lot of blockchains that 2 years ago people were very excited about. Now they're less excited about. So a business that decided that's the only way for them to operate is one single chain, like it's a decision. Again, you might be on the right track on the successful one. And if that's the case, kudos, amazing, you made the right decision. But if not, then like again, replatforming is something I think people need to think a lot about and think about it before, right? Like at the early stages, how do I make sure that I can grow?
It's a good thing we're in a very predictable market, so we don't have any
uncertainty
at all.
So very strong argument for interoperability here. So guys, we have to wrap it up, but before we finish, we need to touch upon the obstacles, right? And one of the obstacles that we all have agreed upon when we were a little bit debating this panel is UI UX. So who wants to take UI UX? Jonathan, you feel like giving us the ledger perspective on UI UX?
Yeah, so we are thinking of, you know, if you want to interact with the app, for example, you first have to install an extension, probably MetaMask today, and you have to sync everything. You have to understand what is an address, etc., and you have to understand the UI. Every time you want to do an action on the website, you will have this pop from MetaMask, and you have to understand some data like the fees, and you have to click on it, and you have to sync other wallet if you have one. Everything is a nightmare right now. We are used to use this workflow because we are a power user today. We are early, but we are at Ledger right now. We are more thinking about some idea. Of course, WebOpen is one, using the biometry to sign a message, etc. But we are thinking, we are developing a way for a web wallet, for example, to have you interact with a DApp. So for just basically a DApp that injects the web wallet as an iframe into the website and have some communication between the two different contexts. And we are just trying to removing the installation step to interesting step, and just go to a website, and you won't have to switch from one tab to another. For example, this is one of the UX we are developing right now, and we probably give the mic to one of you if you want to add something, because I have the feeling.
Well, we asked to wrap it up, guys.
Yeah.
So I apologize. I'm getting signs from all over, and I'm nodding to everyone. Taken. So one last question, a short one to every one of you, is when you close your eyes and you imagine Web3, how it's going to look like? Here you go, Arik. Sorry. Refocus the platform.
I'll just say that, like, at least when I think about UI UX, I think about how do we build the UI and UX for other people to build amazing tools for like the broad audience. And so how does Web3 look like? It looks like the best products in the market in general. Like it's the best products that are going to be built, and they're going to have a Web3 element to them. It's going to be great. It's going to give them more power. But eventually, it's just going to be the best products that are out there are going to be our representation of UI UX.
Sorry, they have the strongest will survive.
Yeah,
Go around.
so for me, Web3 adoption looks like me having money on the internet and not as a separate system as it is today. It's having assets on the internet, NFTs, maybe something different, and is having my identity built the way I wanted it to build with the information I want to share as part of the internet level. We're not there yet, quite far away, but if you ask me how Web3 looks like in action, that would be it.
Okay, Jonathan?
And if I close my eyes, to be honest, if I close them, I don't see Web3, I don't see Web2. I only see technology that will be used inside the two worlds in order to merge them.
Very good one. I think it echoes what Stani said this week as well. He said, no, goodbye Web3, hello Web+. So there we go. Well, thank you very much for having us today. Great audience. Thank you. Thank you for the panelists
You're welcome.
and the organizers. Off we go.
you.